Hello and welcome to another video. Ignore my skin, I haven't been bothered to put any skin makeup on because I just couldn't be bothered, to be perfectly honest with you. I just wanted to get a video filmed because I've got quite a lot to do this week and I haven't filmed a video actually in quite a long time because I bulk filmed all the ones that I'd uploaded for the past month. So yeah, I've got quite a lot of filming to do, quite a lot of other stuff to do this week, so hey. Olive. Oh, she definitely does not want to be cuddled right now. So this video is just going to be my May wrap up and my June TBR. So I've written down here all the books that I read in May. It feels like absolutely ages ago since I read the first one on this list, and I've got barely any of the books with me because some of them I'm letting like family members borrow and things like that. So I don't have a whole lot of the books to actually show you, but obviously as normal I'll put the picture of the books that I'm talking about up here so that you know exactly what they look like. So yeah, I'm just going to go through all of the books that I have read. First of all, I read The Long Walk by Stephen King, which is actually just the first story in this collection. There's 3 books in this book, but that was the first one that I read, which was The Long Walk by Stephen King. And this one I read for a video, which is reading books out of my comfort zone. And that video is not up yet because I've only read 2 of the books out of the 4 for that video. So it's taken a long time for me to film because I did have in May a little bit of a reading slump towards the end because I had quite a lot going on and stuff. So anyway, I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars, and I have explained kind of what this is about in my previous, in my May TBR video, and it's just basically about these 100 boys that have to go on this long walk, and they have to just keep like walking until there's only one standing. So they just have to keep walking basically, and they just wear themselves to death pretty much. And if they stop walking below, I can't remember how many miles per hour it is, a certain miles per hour, they get 3 warnings, and after the 3rd warning they get shot. So that's brutal, but yeah, that's what that's about, and I gave that 4 out of 5 stars. I really did enjoy it. So, but yeah, I will have a reading vlog out for this, hopefully in June. I just need to get to the other 2 books for the video, and then I can upload that one. I then read Addicted After All by Krista and Becca Ritchie, which is the 5th book and, well, the 5th and final book in the Addicted series by Krista and Becca Ritchie, and yeah, I'll put the picture of it up here. I read this on my Kindle, absolutely loved it. I love all the characters in this series. I just love it so much. I just love all the like found family and just yeah, the characters really. I mean, there is a plot in the story, but it's mostly character based. Which I didn't think I'd particularly like, but yeah, I absolutely love it. So that I gave 5 out of 5 stars. Then I read After I Do by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and this book I don't have with me at the moment. I do own this book, but I've given it to my grandma to borrow, and then I think my mum will be probably borrowing it afterwards. This book I also gave 5 out of 5 stars. It's basically about a married couple who, after 10 years, they sort of just realise that they just don't love each other anymore. They pretty much don't even like each other at all anymore, and it's just basically about them taking a break, and they say they're going to take a year break, and it's whether they decide to get back together in the end or do they decide it's time to end their marriage. So yeah, it was like a sad book, but it's happy at the same time, and yeah, but I did really enjoy that. It's probably one of my favourite Taylor Jenkins Reid books, to be honest, which is an unpopular opinion because on Goodreads it doesn't have like an amazing rating. It's like under 4-star rating. But I did really enjoy it, so I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I then read The Bride Test by Helen Huang, and this is the 2nd book in the Kiss Quotient series, and I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed this. It was just like a really short romance book, and as always in this series there's someone who's on the like autism spectrum, and that is the guy in this book, and this is sort of like a forced relationship kind of storyline, and it's just nice and cute, and I recommend if you just want something really short. I think it's only 300 pages long, or just less than 300 pages, so it was just really good for a nice quick read really. I enjoyed that one. And I also listened to, what was it called? I Was Born for This by Alice Oseman, and this is something kind of different. This is obviously a YA book. I listened to this via audio while I was like travelling to work and back and stuff, and I did really enjoy this, but I gave it 3 out of 5 stars purely because I think the audience was for people like younger than I am. It's basically about a girl who's like a massive fan of this band called The Ark, and she meets up with this girl that she'd met on the internet like because they're both fans, and they meet up to go and see a concert, and they end up somehow meeting the band members. And there's also switches from point of views for the main character, the girl who I said about, and also one of the band members from the arc. And there's kind of a lot of topics covered in this book, like anxiety, panic attacks, things like that. So yeah, it was just a nice read, and I did enjoy that, so I gave that 3 out of 5 stars. And if you're probably like more a teenager rather than me who's 26, you would probably enjoy this a lot more. But it depends what kind of, because there's no romance in this book or anything like that. I think it's purely just based around friendships and things like that. I then read the first 2 books in the Slam series by Colleen Hoover. I read this one and then this one straight after, so I've only got the 3rd one left to read. So Slammed, I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars, and this is a YA book. I think this was her debut novel. Like, I think this was the first book she ever wrote, which I think you can tell because it's quite like, not basic, but it's like, it's still got that Colleen Hoover feel, like the addicting writing and stuff, but I just feel like it's not as good as her other ones, like not as well developed. But I gave it 4 out of 5 stars because it was just really addicting and I flew through it. And this is kind of like a forbidden romance. A girl meets this guy and then she realises that she can't actually be with him, and you'll find out why. I'm not going to tell you why just because that's a spoiler, even though you find out quite early on in the book, but I'm not going to tell you because I don't want to ruin it for you. But yeah, I did enjoy this book. It was just very addicting and I flew through this in like a day or 2. And then I read Point of Retreat by Colleen Hoover, and it could have, to be honest, I think it could have ended with this book. You didn't need to write any more, because this one I gave 2.5 stars. I feel like the characters just became really, really immature and annoying in this book. And I just feel like the book wasn't needed. It was just like further conflict, which just wasn't needed because the first book kind of ended like well. So if you are going to read this series, I mean, yeah, you could read this as well, but I recommend the first book, but I don't really recommend this one. And the 3rd book in the series is basically the first book, but from the guy's point of view. So I will read that. I think I'm going to read that hopefully in June so that I've got the series done. But yeah, second one was a little disappointing, but never mind. Then I read Then She Was Gone by Jewell, which I don't have the book with me here. I do own it, but my mum borrowed it, she's read it, I think my sister is going to read it, and then my grandma's going to read it. So I also don't have that one here to show you either. But this book I really, really loved. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. This is the thriller, and this is my favourite Jewell book that I've read so far, I think. This one I really, really enjoyed. This one's about a girl who, like a woman who has a child, and she loses her child, like goes missing. I think she doesn't know what's happened to her. The police and that think that she's ran away. I don't know if her daughter's even dead or alive or anything. She just, yeah, and years passed, and she meets this guy, as in the mum meets a guy, and then she realises, she meets the guy's kids, and one of his kids looks so like her daughter, so it's really creepy, and like you're trying to figure out slowly what's going on. And I did kind of predict the ending, but that didn't take away from the enjoyment, like me enjoying the book. I really, really enjoyed it still, and I loved I was interested to find out how they got to the ending. And I just really loved it. I flew through this book in a day, which is why I gave it to my mum and that to read. And my mum has read it and she fully enjoyed it as well. So yeah, if you're going to read any Jewell book, I recommend picking up this one. I also then listened to the audiobook of The No Show by Beth O'Leary, and I actually ended up DNFing this at about 75% because I don't know if it was because I was listening to it via audiobook, that might have been the case, but there was like 3 different girls from 3 different perspectives, and it kept switching between the perspectives, but it was just a bit confusing. I didn't really know what was going on. I didn't know how the stories particularly linked. I did have to Google the ending because I just wanted to know how it ended, but I just couldn't be bothered to listen to the rest of it. So I did look it up, and there was a twist at the end, which I think was cool, but I don't know. I don't know whether it was the fact that I listened to it by audiobook or because of the way it was written. I'm not too sure, but anyway, I did end up DNFing that, so I haven't counted that towards my Goodreads goal. Then I also listened to Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone via audiobook, which is obviously a reread. Oh my god, why can't I speak today? Which is obviously a reread. There we go. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it, actually. I feel like the first time I read this book, I gave it 3 stars, but that was like years and years and years ago. But after listening to it again, after having, it just gave me that like nostalgic feel, and I just really enjoyed listening to it, and I was like dying to read the next one, like listen to the next one. But I've been borrowing the audiobooks via Libby, which is like an app which you can link to your local library and borrow audiobooks for free. But it kind of works like a library in the sense that only a certain amount of people can be borrowing it at one time. So I've got to wait until like the end of September to borrow the second one, so I was really upset about that. But anyway, I will listen to the second one when I get around to it. Then after that, I kind of got into a bit of a reading slump. I just couldn't really get into anything, and I had like a lot going on. My hen do was coming up, and I had a lot on my mind. So I started reading The Never King on my Kindle. It's on Kindle Unlimited. I can't remember the author's name, but I will put like the books that I've mentioned in this video in the description below and the cover up here so you can see what book it is. But this is kind of like a dark Peter Pan retelling kind of, and well, a reimagining, not a retelling, because it's basically, I didn't think it was going to be kind of have like fantasy elements, but it did. It's basically like about this girl who isn't part of this family, and I think it's on every woman in the family's 18th birthday, she gets taken away by Peter Pan and they get tortured, and they never come back sane. They always come back with like mental health issues, and they're all just like messed up in the head. So I thought it sounded really intriguing, but the execution was just weird. And then it turned, instead of turning dark, I thought it was going to be more like a dark kind of book. Well, it is dark, but then it kind of turned a bit too spicy, but like not in a good way. I just thought, what am I reading? So I gave up on that. I think I read about 80% of it, and then I just couldn't be bothered, so I gave up on that one. And then on my Kindle, I picked up The Women in Cabin 10 by Ruth Ware. This was my first Ruth Ware book, and I just thought I needed like a quick thriller, something to grab me in. So I read this book in like 2 days, I think. Like I went down to the beach and I read some of this on the beach, and it was very good. I gave it 3.5 stars. But I just feel like the first half of the book was quite slow, and then the second half of the book really did pick up, and it was really interesting. And it's about this girl that goes onto this cruise ship for part of her job. She sees someone in the cabin next door to her. She sees like a body get thrown overboard and some blood and stuff, and then when she tells the captain and like all the people running on, like working on the cruise ship, none of them believe her, and she can't see this girl who she'd met in the cabin next door, and apparently no one was actually staying there in the first place. So it's all really creepy and weird, and then loads of stuff happens. But yeah, it was a good read. I would recommend it for like a quick thriller, but yes, just bear in mind it is quite slow at the beginning. Then I read A Taste of Poison by Tessonja Odette, which is the 4th book in the Entangled with Fae series, and each book in this series, as you've probably heard me talk about this series loads recently, but each book in the series is a retelling of like a fairy tale. So this one was Snow White. It did take me a while to get into this just because I was in a reading slump, but once I got into it, I really enjoyed it. I couldn't really remember the story of Snow White that well before I went into this, which might have helped if I had, but anyway, I really enjoyed it once I got into it, and I definitely recommend this series, especially if you're starting off with fantasy, because it's really easy to understand. There's not a whole ton of world building, you're straight into it, and yeah, it's just really easy to understand, really easy to read, so I definitely recommend this series, and it's on Kindle Unlimited as well. I gave that book 4 out of 5 stars. I also listened to The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley, and her other books, I've read The Guest List by her, which I did really enjoy. I think I gave that 4 out of 5 stars. And then I also read The Hunting Party by her, which I hated. I gave 2 stars. I really did not enjoy that. And this one, again, was one that was okay. I gave it 2.5 stars. I was listening to it via audiobook, which I feel like if I was reading it physically, I probably would have given up with it because it was just so slow. There was just a lot of talking and like a lot of her talking to different people in the apartment, and it's just not a lot of action, not a lot really going on. So it's basically about this girl who just goes to stay with her brother in Paris in his apartment, and when she gets there, he's not there, and he's nowhere to be found, and she's basically just speaking to everybody in the flat to figure out what's actually happened to her brother. So it's just quite a lot of talking and stuff, not enough action for my liking. It was just quite slow. I mean, the ending was quite good, but it wasn't worth worth it, I don't think, for how slow the book was. I'm glad I've read it anyway, but I'm not sure I'll really be reading any more of Lucy Foley's books in the future because they're all just, apart from the guest list, but they're all just really similar. And finally, on Kindle Unlimited, I also read To Carve a Fey Heart by Tessonja Odette, which is by the same author of the Entangled with Fey series that I mentioned earlier. This is set like 100 years in the past or something, and it's like on some of the characters that I think you meet in the first book in the Entangled with Fey series. And this one's a trilogy, so it's called the Fair Isle trilogy, and this was the first one in the series. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Really, really enjoyed it. Just like a quick, easy fantasy read again. So yeah, if you're just new to fantasy, I recommend all of Tessonja Odette's books because they're just really, really easy to read, and I really enjoy all of them. I haven't been disappointed by any of them. And that is all of the books that I have read in May, and I'm just going to quickly, like really quickly go through all the books that I want to read in June. I usually do 2 separate videos for the ones I want to read and the ones I've read, but I'm just going to combine it into one video and just really, really quickly go through the books that I want to read in June. Okay, so I've got the physical books here that I want to read this month, and then I've got a few on my Kindle that I want to go through. So I'm just going to go through them really, really quickly. So one of them is This Girl by Colleen Hoover, which is the 3rd book in the Slam series, so I just want to get that series done. This probably won't take me very long to get through, to be honest, because these ones are just really, really quick and easy. I also want to read Twisted Games by Huang, which is the 2nd book in the Twisted series. Apparently this one's like the best in the series that everyone said, so I can't wait to get to that one. I did really enjoy Twisted Love, which I've heard like loads of people reading it recently who absolutely hated it, and I've heard so many bad things about it, but I quite enjoyed it. But it wasn't like the kind of book that I was like, oh, I love the male love interest, he's so like good, you know, because he's terrible and the characters are terrible, but I just really enjoyed it. It was just entertaining to me. But yeah, so this one. So The Heart Principle by Helen Huang, which is the 3rd book in the Kiss Quotient series. I actually started this last night. I only read 27 pages, so I barely read any of it, but yeah, I want to read that so that series is also finished. And for the books out of my comfort zone, I've still got 2 books to read for that video. So I want to read Project Hail Mary by Ware, which is like a sci-fi book, and also Circe by Madeline Miller, which is a Greek mythology retelling kind of thing. And yeah, I'm actually really excited to read this one because I think I'm really going to enjoy it, but I'm not too sure about this one because the writing apparently is really like lyrical and like, yeah, some people find it really hard to get through, but I'm going to give it a try. And also I want to start the Red Queen series by Victoria Aveyard. I got this series for my birthday and I'm really excited to get to this. So that's another book that I want to read. And then on my Kindle I've got a few books that I want to read. I've written them down here just so that I don't forget. So I want to read To Wear a Fey Crown and A Spark of Fey War, which is the 2nd and 3rd book in the Fair Isle trilogy by Tessonja Odette, which I read the first one in May, which I just spoke about. So I want to read the next 2 books in the trilogy so that one's also done. They shouldn't take me too long to get through either because they're just really, really easy, fun reads. I also want to read Red, White and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. I've got the book on my Kindle and I'm also waiting for the audiobook on Libby. So I think it said like I should get it in June, so that's why I put it on my June TBR so that I can get to that as well. I don't know whether I'm going to listen to it via audiobook or read it on my Kindle, or whether I do both at the same time, who knows. But yeah, I would like to get to that. Also Fuel the Fire by Krista and Becca Ritchie, which is the 3rd book in the Calloway Sisters series, but yeah, the 7th or 8th book in the Addicted / Calloway Sisters series if you put the series together. It's quite confusing, but I might do a video about that series anyway, like a separate video explaining the order to read them in and what the